Brandon Thurston from Wrestlenomics is up next, and we're going to follow Brandon with John Pollock from Post Wrestling.
Thank you, and good afternoon, everyone.
But we can't ignore the math, okay? We can't ignore the data.
Go on Google Trends, type in your name, then type in mine. You're a straight line, I'm a pyramid.
I like the very direct question on that.
Television ratings, downward spiral. Buy rates, plummeting.
The time is now to turn the math around.
And hello, everybody. Welcome to the Thanksgiving Eve tradition of Pollock and Thurston as we approach U.S. Thanksgiving. Our friends to the south doing everything a month after us Canadians get our turkey out of the way. How are you, Brandon, on this festive eve?
I'm fine. So and I asked you this last year, I think, too, but you're really not going to go to your family members' houses tomorrow and have uncomfortable conversations with them?
No, we will not be discussing who we voted for and where the country stands on certain issues and such. It will be a normal work day for me.
Wow, you already did that last month.
That was it. Yes, we did Thanksgiving back in October. See, we avoid having these holidays right after
do it before the election. Well, I don't know if that's much better, but.
Yeah, I mean, we will have our forthcoming election in due time. But I did offer Brandon. I was like, Brandon, are you available to do the show this week? He said, absolutely. I mean, a true pro. He wouldn't have let any.
I need an excuse. Yes, I'm always up for an excuse to not socially engage.
I seem to recall back in 2019, one of the earliest. This is entry level Wednesday night war drama. Do you remember that first time we had a Dynamite on Thanksgiving Eve and the number came in low and it became one of those early big controversies about Thanksgiving Eve? What happened to Dynamite? It's plummeted. Were people out on Thanksgiving Eve? And it's
a big party night.
A whole instructional about the habits of young viewers on the night before Thanksgiving, and then of course numbers bounced back the next week. But this became a trend for at least the first few years on Thanksgiving Eve. Not as much of a outlier anymore, but I do remember that the early and more innocent days of ratings discourse, which has only gotten more sane and mature as the years have progressed, as Brandon knows firsthand.
I see. So NXT defeated Dynamite on Thanksgiving Eve, November 27th, 2019, 810 to 668. Those numbers, of course, in thousands.
That was the first time Dynamite was dead, as I recall. Yes.
NXT won the prior week, though, too.
This is in total viewers that they won, correct?
Yes.
All right. Well, there you have the history. And, it's a great resource for folks out there, subscribers of Wrestlenomics. You can go back and win all those debates with your friends because you have spreadsheets at your disposal.
Yes. You have access to a big Google sheet. You have access to, if you subscribe on the $10 tier now, you have access to the quarter-hour spreadsheet as well.
Yeah, so after your political arguments at Thanksgiving, of course it's going to move into ratings discourse afterwards, and then you can just pull up a PowerPoint presentation thanks to Brandon Thurston and get into all of that great stuff.
Yes. Coming
up on today's show, we are going to be joined by a recurring guest here on the show, Jason Cruz, a lawyer and the proprietor of MMA Payout.com. He might be for one night only, providing pro wrestling coverage this coming Saturday. We'll talk about that. But mainly, we're going to have Jason on. We're going to talk about the fallout from last Friday's verdict against Conor McGregor, finding him civilly liable in his sexual assault case involving Nikita Hand, who alleged that McGregor had raped her back in December of 2018. And since that time, a lot of fallout for Conor McGregor and the Conor McGregor brand, as multiple companies have ceased association with McGregor. UFC, not so surprisingly, silent so far on the status of Conor McGregor and their relationship with him. But we'll get into all of that with Jason Cruz. But we're going to start off by talking about one of our favorite places in the world. That is Australia. And late Tuesday night, ticket purchasers for the Grand Slam event in Australia receiving an update where they were affectionately referred to as ticket holder. Dear ticket holder, the promoter of AEW Grand Slam Australia wishes to advise you that the venue for Grand Slam Australia on Saturday, February 15th, 2025 has been changed to Brisbane Entertainment Centre. And being so kind as to give you like the exact like mailing address here in case you want to contact them. Ticket holders do not need to take any action. Your new event tickets will be sent to your Ticket Tech app. Okay, so basically your stadium tickets will not be valid for the new venue. So you do have to, I guess, transfer your tickets over the next 2 weeks. But this had been suggested by Fightful that a venue change was in order. Last week on the Tony Khan media call, he was asked about the Grand Slam event in Brisbane and had stated that thousands of tickets had been sold, but seemed
so at least 2,000, right?
Thousands was plural, and that he was unsure right now about the distribution of this event due to the time zone, airing it as a pay-per-view. And in looking this up, they actually did announce that this would air. Their broadcaster in Australia is ESPN Australia, which covers Australia, New Zealand, and the Pacific Islands. And they had promoted that this event will air on ESPN Australia. So still remains to be seen what sort of broadcast this is going to entail for AEW. But the Brisbane Entertainment Centre, I
think it's pretty likely domestically this is going to be a special on Max of some sort. I don't know, live. And I haven't been told that. That's just me decoding what Tony said on the media call on Thursday.
Yeah, he certainly indicated like running it as a pay-per-view would be pretty tough.
Because of the time difference.
It's either you're talking about airing this like it's a roughly 12-hour time difference. So you either air it live at an awful time period, or it's going to be on a lengthy tape delay of that amount.
So right now in Brisbane, it is 4 a.m.
Okay, so it's a difference of 15 hours.
Something like that. What time in Brisbane is it when it's 8 p.m. in New York?
It would be 11 a.m.
11 a.m. That's not too bad if you do it on a weekend. And WB did their Elimination Chamber, and I remember it was just wake up on a weekend morning and watch it.
I think it does make more sense to be a streaming event at that time rather than a pay-per-view. But we will see. Like this event, this is creeping up. Like we are not that far away. We're only just over 2 months away from this event. But the new venue, it holds approximately 13,600. The Suncorp Stadium held over 52,000. So a dramatic increase. Some people suggesting if John Moxley had received any death threats, and this led to the move to the smaller venue.
Yes. There's been no explanation that we've heard of. We don't know if there was a bomb threat. No reason to believe there were any bomb threats at this point. But yeah, obviously, right, that you could see the ticket map, and I believe WrestleTix definitely had some comments on a WrestleTix post talking about how that it looked like ticket sales were pretty weak for this.
Can you? I know you have tried to be able to like hammer down some information on this show, and it's relatively difficult in Australia, is it not? You need an actual physical address to even inquire about.
You're talking about a records request?
Yes.
Well, this wouldn't be subject to records request, right? Because this wasn't we had done no records request for Elimination Chamber in Perth because it sure sounded like there was a site fee, according to Mark Shapiro. He said that it was $16 million for a combination of TKO events. So we did make a records request, and they used an exemption to not give us any of the site fee type information. And we got some attendance information out of it, just the number of attendees, looking like they included not only suites in their announced number, but maybe some people who were working the show as well. But I don't think that this was something that had a site fee associated with it, but maybe it did.
Well, that event is going down February the 15th, and this past weekend at Full Gear, they started really amping up the promotion for the mother of all simulcasts on January 1st. That is when Dynamite will start to be simulcast on Max. It will kick off New Year's Day with the Fight for the Fallen show from Asheville, North Carolina, and then we will get a fracturing of the viewing audience on Wednesdays.
Yeah, what's going to happen? We're going to... I bet the cannibalization, and they'll have to, somebody's going to have to give up some numbers to prove this wrong, but I bet the cannibalization won't be as strong as you would think it will be. Because you've got hundreds of thousands of people who are used to turning on TBS every Wednesday night. more than 500,000 homes. Well, it's something like that. And they're going to continue to do their routine activity of turning it on with their old rubbery remote. Why would you sort of try to figure out how to watch it on Max? Not that people won't. I think there will be additional viewers, more so than ever before, because you're going to be in probably tens of millions of extra homes because of being on Max.
Do you have Max?
States. Yes, some way or another.
So I had my first experience with Max over the past week, because here in Canada, we do not have access to Max. I will tell you my workaround, but we do have a service called Crave, which is run by Bell, which effectively takes a lot of the programming that you see on Max, but it's not a mirror service. So I wanted to watch the Ted Turner series, and it did not pop up on Crave. I may or may not have contacted someone with a Max account and gone through those means. I mean, I am a professional. I do have to watch this stuff, and logged on to Max. I've got to say, this is quite a robust service. I was like, this is way better than Crave. Number one, way more options.
A lot of old movies, right?
Tons of stuff. It's like Crave is like a decent workaround to this, but I mean, Max is, I had a very enjoyable time logging onto Max. I had no issues, and I watched the 6-part Ted Turner series, which is
have you watched all of it?
I watched all of it, yes.
Is there any wrestling mentions?
I am not kidding, Brandon. The amount of wrestling content in this 6-part, roughly 5.5, 6 hour series it's definitely under 90 seconds. Like, it's just B-roll of wrestling. Even during a part where they are doing a little montage of the programming that built TBS, like, they didn't even use wrestling B-roll during that footage.
Ted Turner didn't wake up every morning thinking, how am I going to beat Vince McMahon today?
I mean, I came away from this, and believe me, this is very much a hagiography of Ted Turner on
his own, on the streaming service that is owned by the company that he founded.
Well, it is interesting because it's not as though Turner is like Turner Broadcasting is like, they are painted as like they kicked this guy out of his own company and he was on the verge of just ruin. But he is, you come out of this as this is a massive influencer on cable television and a world-renowned figure. You could not have a more 180 of a takeaway of this series versus Vince McMahon at the end of it all. But I would say if you are a Hall of Fame voter, for instance, and you watch this, if you were negative on Ted Turner for the reasons you just listed, this would confirm a lot of that, because wrestling is not figured into any of his legacy in this by the people around him that constructed this documentary.
No, I think everything involving wrestling and wrestling fandom has a sort of myopic view of wrestling's place in larger culture. Wrestling, I run into people all the time who just like, you have to describe what pro wrestling is to them sometimes.
This sounds like an awful Thanksgiving conversation. I mean,
yeah.
The amount.
I remember working like some indie shows. Like we set up in like a mall, and we had a ring. We set up a ring in like the middle of like a half deserted mall, and people were walking by, and they walk past the ring and be like, "What is?" And they're pounding on. They would like walk up right to the apron and pound. I'd be like, "What is this? Is this boxing?" And I would tell them, "It's Canadian boxing. Yeah, that's what it is. Come back at noon, and we're gonna have some matches."
Yeah, I mean, we had a big show at a mall on Saturday with Game Changer Wrestling.
Yes,
and,
yes.
We don't have time right now, but later on in the show, we are going to discuss one of the big appearances at that Dream On event from GCW. Ricky Starks making his return to GCW, and what a return it has been, where in record time he was promoted and removed from upcoming shows from GCW. So a lot of discussion there, and bringing to the forefront one of Brandon's favorite topics, independent contractors in pro wrestling.
I heard about this. Yes.
I heard this comment. I was like, okay, this is going. We're going to go through Brandon's list of boxes here.
But we're waiting for that. We're not doing that now.
No, we're teasing.
Okay.
We're teasing.
I won't have any takes then. Okay, I'll preserve them.
Yes. Before we welcome in our guest, Brandon, I know you're not like day-to-day following all of the happenings in MMA, unless you are a closet fan that just really hides it very well. But what have you sort of observed regarding the Conor McGregor case since Friday, and what has caught your attention?
Well, I did do some reading this morning, I understand Conor. This is not the first time that Conor McGregor has been accused of sexual assault. There's at least the Miami Heat game incident where he also punched out the mascot, where he's alleged to have assaulted a woman in a restroom. And is there another case? I know. So there was an
incident on a boat.
On the boat, yes. And the woman jumped off of the yacht into the
water.
Had to
be rescued by the Coast Guard.
And broke her arm in the process.
There may have been.
This is what I read. This is what I read this morning. Also, so Nikita, what is her
Nikita Hand.
Nikita Hand. It came out. The news came out after the trial decision, after the verdict came out that Conor McGregor was found to be civilly liable. Apparently, in June, the jury was not allowed to know, but in June, men in balaclavas broke into her house and injured her partner.
Stabbed him, yeah.
Stabbed him.
And this, just to explain, this was not allowed to be introduced as evidence because it was thought to be that this would somehow sway the jury. And Nikita Hand is not blaming Conor McGregor for being behind this incident at her home, but that it was an example of the kind of support Conor McGregor has and that it was motivated by this story and the kind of influence Conor McGregor has on people.
And the woman who jumped off of the yacht, which was in Spain now, I recall, she then made a report to the police locally in Dublin, if I'm remembering right, and then her car was set on fire.
Yes. So, I mean, you have these two incidents of people that had made accusations against Conor McGregor, and whether indirect or not, some, near fatal consequence in retaliation for these as well.
So he's still under contract to UFC, is that right?
He's under contract to the UFC, and he's also a part owner in BKFC, which is the Bare Knuckle Group as well. Neither of which have stated anything since.
Now, he hasn't fought since 2021, I think.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So, what's UFC saying about this at this time?
You would nothing so far.
Okay.
But inevitably, I mean, they are off this weekend, so there will be no media around UFC. But next week they do have a pay-per-view on December 7th in Vegas. I would think Dana White has to be asked about Conor McGregor. It is the biggest story in the industry. I would hope that it is addressed next week. Maybe we will get some more insight from Jason Cruz from MMA Payout, legal extraordinaire, and Survivor Series correspondent this coming Saturday as well. The man does it all.
Hi, Jason.
Hey, how you doing, Brandon? Hi, John. Thanks for having me on, and happy American Thanksgiving to you guys.
Yes, I wish it to all of you from up here in the north in Canada. We still observe, celebrating U.S. Thanksgiving is not an anomaly in Canada. There are some who do celebrate up here, so they get two Thanksgivings in a month after each other. But we're not here to talk about turkeys. Let us talk about the outcome from Friday's case. And Jason, I'm sure you were following this very closely. And number one, just some of your observations of the case and the jury arriving at this verdict, finding Conor McGregor civilly liable. Just any overall thoughts you had about this case and how it was adjudicated.
I'll be very honest with you guys that I was taken aback by the fact that the jury found in favor of Nikita Hand. I think that this was a very tough case when you consider the fact that the criminal prosecutors did not believe that they had a tight enough case to take on the criminal case against Conor McGregor. Two things that I really think came out that the jury was very persuaded with, and the first being the evidence. It's very graphic in nature when you listen to the evidence as to what went on. The basically Hand afterward when she went to the hospital, and she was indicating that she had a period and they had to remove her tampon from her due to what had happened with between Hand and McGregor, and allegedly Lawrence and McGregor as well. The photos, which we were not privy to, but the jury was privy to. I think that the bruising, the overall bruising, the testimony from the medical experts that examined Ms. Hand really persuaded the jury in finding in favor of Ms. Hand in this case. I think that it was graphic in nature. The video, the photographs taken, as well as the testimony by the experts indicating, the extreme nature of these injuries. With that being said, there were obviously issues with her story which I believe you may have already talked about. She was going out on a night with her friends on a Christmas for a holiday party. She had a daughter at home. She had a boyfriend at home. Throughout the night, there's phone logs wherein she basically lied to her boyfriend at the time as to where she was. She went to a hotel room with McGregor and Lawrence, knowing that, well, not knowing, but basically going to the hotel to party. She had a lot of drinks. She had a lot of drinks. Excuse me. She had a lot of drinks. She had taken cocaine, and there was surveillance video later on, which showed her after the rape, that she was amicable toward McGregor and Lawrence. So those things did not add up if you were given that to a jury. However, I think that the extreme nature of the injuries really persuaded the jury here.
Yeah, and we should just mention the fact this was a case against both Conor McGregor and his friend James Lawrence. They did not find James Lawrence liable in this. Obviously, Conor McGregor was found liable, and the defense tried to use this argument relying on security footage of such to kind of emphasize that she was a willing participant in all of this. From those that were in the courtroom, explained that Nikita Hand had a very difficult time watching this footage, stating she had no recall of it. And I think largely, Jason, it was like the forensic evidence that really backed up her story and seemed to be the most persuasive with the jury when it came to that. And looking at the security footage as evidence of someone that what is going to be the response of someone that has just been through this. And that seemed to be where the jury had to make that distinction.
Yes. And I think this is one where the jury really listened in as to what, PTSD, I believe Hand was talking about. Yes. The reasons why she was acting in such a way after the rape occurred. I think that the jury had to have some sort of explanation about why was she acting in such a way, which one would think would be totally against what she had just experienced. So I believe that the jury was satisfied with what the experts on Hand's side had testified to as to what she was feeling, that sort of state of mind, and coming to that resolution with what you saw in the video.
Yeah, and I would also add the fact that this is limited to people that were actually in the courtroom to see it, but they also did have like photographic evidence of this bruising that she had the day after. And one of the I guess physicians that had examined her is like among the worst they had ever seen. Like these seem to be very graphic photos, and I would imagine that would be a very hard piece of evidence to be able to provide a defense for what happened when, again, a lot of the forensic evidence, it lined up with what she was arguing occurred to her. And it seemed like those photos would have had a big impact as well.
I definitely think so. And I don't think that when faced with that question on the stand, McGregor kind of punted as far as how that happened. I think there was an incident where he indicated he didn't know where the bruising came from. He suggested perhaps that
she fell in a bathtub,
she felt like she was faking that she was drowning or swimming or whatnot. and he, I guess, suggested that perhaps that's where the bruising occurred. Obviously, if you were given that alibi versus what you saw, you can make your own conclusions as to who you believed, and that preponderance of the evidence in the civil court would be much easier to, not easier, but would be a bar you could surmount versus a preponderant. I mean, a more likely than not standard in a criminal court.
And are the standards for a case like this? This was in Ireland. This case was litigated in Dublin. Are there any differences between what we're more familiar with in U.S. law and Irish law, and where this is a civil case? So I understand the burden to win the case for the plaintiff is basically like a more than 50% chance that she's being truthful, as opposed to a criminal court where it's beyond a reasonable doubt, which is a lot more than 50%. It's true.
Correct. So, I mean, remarkably, and just doing my research before coming upon here, the legal thresholds for both civil and criminal cases are mirror each other in the U.S. and Irish courts, meaning that the standards in civil cases here in the U.S. are similar to the Irish court. So we can make examples of the thresholds here. Burden of proof that a prosecutor must have is beyond a reasonable doubt, criminal prosecutor. And in a civil case, if you're the plaintiff, you must prove a preponderance of the evidence, more likely than not. 51% is what they kind of always give you if you were to visualize that, versus preponderance of evidence is much greater burden to prove. One of the things that I just want to point out is, as far as damages are different in the Irish courts. They have multiple layers of damages, which I can't really as an expert go into, but they did have award damages to her. In the U.S., it's usually general and special damages. Special damages mainly being like, special damages like a loss of income, things of that nature. I believe she didn't get what she was asking for, which was over €1 million. But she was given 250, almost €250 in this particular case.
250,000, yeah.
250,000. Excuse me. Yeah, 250,000. So she wasn't. I believe she was not given punitive damages, which punitive damages here in the U.S. courts are only in certain jurisdictions. For instance, Washington State, where I live, they don't have punitive damages in that particular case. In this particular forum. And then special damages is just to go back, is kind of a pain and suffering here in the U.S., whereas I'm not sure if that differs. I know Hand was wanting loss of economic ability, or loss of, and I don't know if she received. I don't believe she received all that she was requesting.
Yeah, I mean, in the argument, it had been said they had arrived at that figure from, both the loss of her ability to work and as well having to move homes stemming from this incident that happened in June that may have been, attached to people reacting to this case, although she did state she was not blaming Conor McGregor specifically for that incident, but it was a byproduct of it as well. So those are sort of a lot of the key points of the case. Now, since that time, we have seen, from many people that are in Ireland, they have conveyed the fact that Conor McGregor's reputation has plummeted greatly among several years at this point. I mean, we have so many incidents involving him. This being, the first time, he has been, found liable by a jury of his peers. What kind of fallout did you expect, Jason, and the fact that this was going to affect, his marketing abilities with some of these companies that have dropped him? Did you think that this was going to cross that threshold of people feeling they can't be in business with this individual?
So interesting enough, I was actually on vacation in Dublin this past August. I mean, my wife's family is from Ireland, so we went to visit, and it's interesting the fandom of McGregor's following. He's such a polarizing figure because either you get in Dublin, I ask about him, you either get a roll of the eyes or somebody who's really a big MMA fan. Mm-hmm. There's not really a indifference, and I guess you could say the same here in the United States as far as what you think of Conor McGregor. Now the fallout, of course, he's been eliminated from the game Hitman. As well as no longer being, I don't know, the face of the Proper 12 brand. He already had sold his stake in Proper 12, mm-hmm. So I don't know if he was getting compensated per appearance or whatnot. But as far as more fallout, time will tell, because it's obviously he has come out and said that he's denying the jury verdict. He's proclaiming his innocence and the fact that he is going to appeal the verdict. This is one of those things where his PR people will probably get around and figure out how to how to deal with damage control from this. BKFC hasn't said anything at this particular point. I doubt that BKFC will do anything to Conor McGregor. Maybe it's one of these things where he lays low for a while and then resurfaces at some certain point. But yeah, I was surprised that Proper 12 did disassociate with him. It seemed like one of those things where you could just kind of ghost him in a way in which you don't utilize him, but to make that announcement public obviously shows that there is a pulse in which people are fatigued with Conor McGregor's antics.
How likely do you guys think it is that he's going to fight in UFC again? Like, is there any comparable case where someone's been held liable for something like sexual assault in the past? And obviously there's different factors here because Conor McGregor is probably the biggest star in MMA, right?
Yeah, he's still. And perhaps this is my jaded combat sports guy thing. I look to the Greg Hardy situation. The UFC. He was good on the. Greg Hardy, former Carolina Panthers, was going to be tried for, I believe, sexual misconduct. And there is a great Deadspin article way back when with photographic evidence alleging that Greg Hardy did this to his girlfriend. He was accused of, I believe, battery, and he basically was excommunicated from the NFL. He decided to be an MMA fighter. He did well on the MMA scene, and Dana White still hired him, despite the fact that he had these allegations. Now, if you want to know what happened with the criminal case, I believe what happened was the girlfriend did not want to show up in court and testify against Greg Hardy, whether it be she was afraid, she was paid off, or whatnot. So there's a case right there with Greg Hardy. There are other cases of minor UFC fighters with, War Machine, obviously, if you recall, if you do that, Google that way back to War Machine. His criminal behavior happened post UFC, but there are, horrible domestic violence issues in the case of combat sports and the UFC. Now, there hasn't been someone with this big of a star power as a Conor McGregor. So to go back to your question, Brandon, will he be back in the UFC? Will he fight again? Yes, he will. I don't think that there's a shadow of a doubt in my mind. If Conor McGregor wanted to come back and is able to come back in 2025, they will make a fight for him.
Revisiting the Greg Hardy charges, he He was found guilty of assault and communicating threats, sentenced to 18 months of probation. He then appealed the decision, requesting a jury trial, and that's when the woman did not come forward, and the prosecutor's office dropped the charges.
Yeah, thank you for
this was a very controversial hire by the UFC. I'm with you, Jason. I do not think the UFC is going to cut ties with Conor McGregor, and I don't think that it's going to be one where I think in especially the MMA audience, I think many of them, like we just saw John Jones fight, and he had a public incident not that long ago. Mike Tyson just fought, and certainly you can argue in the case of Mike Tyson here as someone that served his time, like what is considered paying your debt to society, but nonetheless, like he has been a greatly rehabilitated figure, and I do believe that of these stars, the public gives them chance after chance, and I think in the eventual time passing here, Conor McGregor will be welcomed back by fight fans, whether you think that is right or wrong.
And it is the audience that cheers Donald Trump, who's also been held civilly liable for sexual assault.
And that's a comparison people have made. Like the country just elected someone that went through a very similar case as Conor McGregor did. And I mean, Dana White, if you go through the history of Dana White with Conor McGregor, the only time I can ever recall him publicly voicing any discernible dissent towards Conor McGregor was when he threw that dolly back in 2018. And he went on ESPN that night and was just, you could see he was just, this crossed the line, that this cannot happen. And within months, though, not only was Conor McGregor back in the fold, like that footage was being used to sell the fight with Khabib Nurmagomedov. So, I mean, that tells you right there the fight industry in a very easy to understand way. I mean, Dana White, I can only imagine, is going to be very vague next week if he is asked about this. And when the time comes, I think they will be in business with Conor McGregor should he pursue fighting, which I think for his brand, he indicated in that statement over the weekend about getting everyone's attention back to him fighting, which is probably, from a PR stance, the easiest way to endear yourself to a fan base.
Yeah, I think so. I think that everybody loves a redemption story, no matter how heinous people think Conor McGregor is. They still want to. There's still a certain section of fan that wants to see him fight. I think it's still, despite the fact he hasn't fought since 2021. I mean, we're going to be going up on 4 years when and if he decides to head back into the octagon. I think he's still going to get into the octagon because I mean, this is a wider discussion, but I don't think he knows what he wants to do. I just think that this time away has kind of given him this outlet to do all these kind of crazy things. And it's clear. This was 6 years ago when this happened, but you can imagine, he has no direction aside from fighting. And so, when he gets back into the octagon, from a business perspective, the UFC thinks that this will be probably, most likely, the biggest card that they will hold whenever he decides to return.
I feel very confident in that being the UFC's stance toward this. I guess a broader question, I'll throw it to you, Brandon, but I'd also like to hear Jason as well, of Disney's and ESPN's comfort level in promoting Conor McGregor. I'm certain that today they would probably maybe be more leery, but this is a major figure that dramatically helped them launch ESPN Plus. It was Conor McGregor and that first Donald Cerrone fight. Brandon, I mean, is this the Disney doctrine?
I think this is the Snickers doctrine, the Slim Jim doctrine. Who has the power in wrestling or MMA? I think is most of all the TV partners, if they want to. And
this is a
pressure.
Contract year as well that is coming up. Like, this is a very big year for the UFC, and you would think Conor McGregor having a fight on the books is going to be something UFC is going to be pushing for once they feel it's advantageous to be able to promote him.
Yeah, because they control so much of UFC's revenue. If you want to make your TV partner happy, you usually listen to them. But it's a question of, is that something that Jimmy Pitaro, who's in charge of CNN, is going to apply pressure for?
It is interesting to see as well the relative differences between, like, I look at the case of a WWE versus UFC, and it just feels as though like WWE, they have not touched Brock Lesnar since the Janelle Grant lawsuit was filed. And I mean, Brock is not being accused at the level of what Conor McGregor has been. And they are just completely hands off towards him. Do you think that is an indication, Jason, of the fan base's reaction that I feel in pro wrestling? I feel there would be a lot more pushback to a Brock Lesnar showing up on television versus the announcement of a Conor McGregor fight in 6 months.
I agree. I think that the UFC fans, hardcore UFC fans, follow whatever Dana White wants, believes in, whatnot. WWE, I think, is more sanitary, to be honest with you. So they're more worried of their public perception. This whole Vince McMahon fallout really, has put them more on guard from my perspective. It's put them more on guard as to who they utilize and what they can possibly do. Obviously, we'll see how it all pans out with Linda McMahon now being a part of the Trump cabinet at this particular point. But as far as the UFC goes, I think if you have a strong leader like Dana White that says, look, Conor McGregor says, even despite the fact that a jury found him civilly liable, they did not criminally prosecute him because of the lack of evidence. And, with that kind of talking point, and the fact that he's going to appeal the decision, kind of gives you a little bit of, and this is a poor word to use, comfort in watching Conor McGregor, and perhaps that's how he sells it to ESPN executives that are concerned with the perception of having a guy who was found civilly liable for basically rape. To headline, whatever UFC event he decides to headline. And, again, the jaded Jason Cruz combat sports guys thinks that it'll all come down to money. McGregor still, despite all of his just past indiscretions, is a huge star that can rake in a huge pay-per-view buys, attendance and gates. He is a big needle mover, the kind that Dana White cannot let go, despite of all these things. I mean, think about it for a sec. I'm sorry, I might be going over time, but think about it for a sec. What they've done, what Dana White has done for a guy like John Jones, he moved a event from Las Vegas to California because of John Jones and the fact that the commission wouldn't clear him. This in New York, just a couple weeks ago, he changed the gloves because John Jones didn't like the fit of the gloves. He's willing to make all of these accommodations because the guys who make the most money, want them. So, if Conor McGregor, if and when Conor McGregor comes back, Dana White will bend over backwards to ensure that whatever event this is goes out without a hitch. They make a lot of money. And if there is pushback, from journalists or people protesting, he will ensure that will be sidled off to a certain section and not over whatever card that McGregor is on.
Well, I think we will leave it there, Jason. But this has been a great kind of a breakdown of the entire case and what this leads towards Conor McGregor. I mean, just history being an indicator of things. Large stars are going to be given chance after chance after chance, and I think that will be the case for Conor McGregor. But it's not like this is an isolated incident for Conor McGregor. No. Like it is it is as much a part of his resume as his fighting career has been. It's been the discretions outside of the cage that those are what is publicly known. I mean, this guy has just been involved in so much that I think it's hard to imagine that there is a breaking point when it comes to the UFC and what they will ultimately tolerate with their stars. And frankly, not to just pin the UFC, but what the audience as well will allow. And there are many out there that this guy provides me entertainment, and that is the decision-making process. And what happens outside of that is not of my, that does not go into my decision-making process of whether I'm going to support the athlete Conor McGregor versus the person Conor McGregor. But it is interesting, especially as we look at kind of the dichotomy with wrestling fans, where I think in a greater percentage, I think there would be just outcry if the shoe was on the other foot and you were trying to introduce a star back with something like this as that baggage. But to tie it all up, you will be in Vancouver this coming Saturday for Survivor Series. Was War Games just enough of a hook, Jason, to get you to cross the border this coming weekend?
You know what? Yes. My sons are big wrestling fans, so it was good, and good enough for me to cross the border we're heading to Vancouver tomorrow. No, I'm sorry. Excuse me. Friday after Thanksgiving. But it was good enough. You get to see all of the. We went to the SmackDown that was here in September. And we didn't get to see we didn't get to see guys like The Rock. So we're hoping that The Rock will be in attendance for War Games. So I mean, it'll be my first War Games with my son. So how many dads could say that?
How about the start time? 6 Eastern, 3 Pacific. I mean,
okay. Since we're getting into this, this is somebody's going to call me a mark, but we are going to the meet and greet with Chelsea Green earlier in the day. So we're going to do that, and then we're going to go at 2:30. Not too bad at all. Wake up, go to the meet and greet, then head on over to Rogers Arena. Maybe I'll get some Tim Hortons.
You know what? You never go wrong, okay, with the Tim Hortons. It's pretty much a must when you're crossing the border. Well, have a great time.
Thank you so much.
With your kids at the show. It's always great to catch up with you, Jason. And follow all of his great work. MMApayout.com. He has a loose affiliation with X, but the man is all in on Blue Sky as our most
Blue Sky. Yeah, go follow me on Blue Sky. We're heading off of X very soon. But
yeah, I'm hesitant to even promote it. I don't want too many people following me on Blue Sky. I love Blue Sky the way it is, and I don't want to overwhelm my sensories. So we're all team Blue Sky, I think, on this.
Yep.
All right. Excellent. Thanks so much, Jason, and have a great time this weekend.
Okay, thank you very much. Have a great rest of the day.
All right, thanks, Jason. Jason Cruz joining us from MMA Payout, and a very interesting moral discussion, as there always are in mixed martial arts and combat sports by extension. I predict Conor McGregor fights within 8 months. That's my prediction.
Within 8 months.
Yeah. I'm gonna say
why has he taken so long to fight at this point? He's not fought since 2021. It's been 3 years.
So he shattered his leg in this fight with Dustin Poirier in July 2021. So he did have to rehab from that. But I mean, that's, it's a leg break. It was not, it was pretty gruesome. But then it was a case of, I think there's a lot more under the surface of why he has not fought, but it has been this prolonged. He was supposed to fight in June, and then just several weeks before, he broke a toe, which is, not convenient, but hardly the reason that, he has gone into fights a lot worse than with a broken toe. And since that time, he has pretty much just been discarded, or at least put on the sidelines. And Dana White keeps moving the timeline away. His latest
last week was stating he'll fight in late 2025. That was before the verdict was rendered. But you would have to think that this is the calculus of, it's a big contract year for them, and having a Conor McGregor fight on the books would be advantageous for the UFC. And I think there would be some backlash to the announcement of a Conor McGregor, but do I think that they would not have a very successful show built around Conor McGregor? I don't doubt that they would. I think that there would still be a lot of support for Conor McGregor, and I think you can find that online, that there are many that are going to side with a Conor McGregor. I guess the comparison
is, if there was an NFL player, and just given the vast numbers of NFL players that there are, there must have been something like this in the NFL or the NBA or the NHL or Major League Baseball, and what happens with those people in those situations. I would have to look into it. Yeah.
Let's move on to talk about a few other items that we have here. We'll get to the GCW stuff shortly, but you did some digging over the past week, and everyone's favorite lawsuit that's kind of just quietly moving along, that is Wesley Eisold and his suit over the American Nightmare trademark and likeness, that you have been able to find that this neck tattoo, this may be of great value to Cody Rhodes in this case, is what you understand?
Yes. Now, I think Cody Rhodes got the tattoo in early 2020. So he's not necessarily playing the long game here with this. It's not like he got this tattooed after the settlement was made. So there was a settlement, to catch you up. There's a settlement made between punk rock musician Wesley Eisold. He trademarked the term American Nightmare for his American Nightmare band, which I guess is not his primary band anymore, but they still did tour as recently as last year. There's still American Nightmare band merchandise being sold. When Cody Rhodes decided he wanted to use the American Nightmare trademark in wrestling, he tried to register a trademark with the USPTO. And that's where Wesley Eisold and Cody Rhodes came together, and they eventually made a settlement in 2021. Cody Rhodes gave him tens of thousands of dollars, and he was allowed to use the trademark only if the text of American Nightmare was also accompanied by either Cody Rhodes' likeness, his name in text, or other substantial wrestling indicia. Wrestling indicia. That's how you pronounce that word, I learned the other day.
It sounds like an upcoming group coming.
Which, at the time, Cody was with AEW, so the only specific example given of wrestling indicia is the AEW logo. So we reported on this, I believe it was September. This lawsuit was filed because Wesley Eisold went on WWE Shop and looked at, look, they're selling all this American Nightmare merchandise that's not meeting this agreement, doesn't have his name or his likeness. We can show some of this here. These are some of the items that Wesley Eisold is pointing to say, hey, look, there's American Nightmare all over this merchandise, but you're not using his name or his likeness or wrestling indicia somewhere, and it's got to be 75% larger than the American Nightmare text. In any case, W responded. W, by the way, is being represented by the same lawyers. Wesley Eisold is suing not only Cody, but WWE and Fanatics, which runs the merchandise store. And WWE and Fanatics are being represented by the same attorney. Cody has his own separate attorney. I think they're all on the same page here, though. And the WWE Fanatics lawyers are arguing but look at all this merchandise. It has the Cody Rhodes skull logo on it. And not only is that skull logo itself a registered trademark, which it is, you can go on the Patent and Trademark Office, you can find Cody Runnels' trademark for this skull logo, but it's also the design that is tattooed on his neck. Therefore, and it's recognized globally, they argue. It's recognized, he's such a popular star that everybody understands that this logo is associated with Cody Rhodes, it is associated with wrestling, and it's on his skin. Therefore, it's a part of his likeness. And all these merchandise items that you're complaining about, they all have the logo on them. Actually, one of them that they bring up, that the plaintiffs bring up, that Wesley Eisold brings up here, it's like a dog or a wolf wearing a crown, and they're saying that that's actually the Husky Pharaoh, and that also is included. That's wrestling indicia too, because Cody Rhodes is known to have a dog by the public, so that doesn't work anyway. It's a surprising response. And it seems clever on its face. We'll see what the judge thinks of it, and I'm sure the plaintiffs will still have a response yet to come.
This is my favorite case ongoing at the moment. Like, this is just a nice, wholesome case to keep following, and Brandon's on top of it. Also, being announced this past Monday is that Damian Williams. Who is Damian Williams? Start to Google him. He is now the outgoing United States Attorney for the Southern District of New York, who has served as the Chief Federal Law Enforcement Officer in the district. He announced on Monday his intention to resign his position as U.S. Attorney effective midnight, December 13th, 2024. Edward Y. Yim, who currently serves as Deputy United States Attorney, will become the acting United States Attorney upon his departure. This is, of course, a appointed title. And Damian Williams stating, "Today is a bittersweet day for me as I announce my resignation as U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York. It is bitter in the sense that I am leaving my dream job, leading an institution I love that is filled with the finest public servants in the world. It is sweet in that I am confident I am leaving at a time when the office is functioning at an incredibly high level." So why is this important for us to be bringing up, Brandon?
Well, we've seen Damian Williams' name in the Grant v. WWE et al. Case, which is the lawsuit that Janelle Grant filed in January against WWE, Vince McMahon, and John Laurinaitis. It had been going along until late May or June, when we suddenly got some filings on the docket that said, hey, there's U.S. attorneys here from the Southern District of New York who are requesting that we put this case on a stay. And so it has been on a stay and will be on pause. That's why we haven't had any news on that case itself. There's been Dr. Kolker news, but that's another story. But this case between Janelle Grant, WB, John Laurinaitis, Vince McMahon is on a stay until December 11th.
2 weeks from today.
Yeah. And that's at the request of the U.S. attorneys at the Southern District of New York, who are reportedly are undergoing a criminal investigation into allegations of sexual assault and sex trafficking against Vince McMahon. So is Vince McMahon going to be indicted or not? If he's indicted, it is most likely going to be from the Southern District of New York. That is the same law office, that is the same prosecutor that has indicted recently Puff Daddy, P. Diddy for sex trafficking allegations. Also New York Mayor Eric Adams. So these very high-profile cases. It seems that the Southern District of New York is a very high-profile office. So he's, of course, so the U.S. attorney, that is like the person in charge of SDNY. He's resigning. There's his deputy, his next underboss is going to take over for him in the interim, but he's a presidential appointee. The U.S. Senate has to approve. He was nominated by Joe Biden. He's approved by the Senate. There's a new president coming into office in January who's going to reportedly nominate. Trump is going to nominate. Here's this guy, Jay Clayton, who was the Securities and Exchange Commission chief in Trump's first administration. So we'll have Jay Clayton probably taking over SDNY, presumably after he's confirmed by the Senate. What does this mean for the Grant case? I don't know. I mean, but it is a significant thing to watch.
There's probably too many probabilities without just. We don't know what's going to ultimately happen with this, but it's a significant shift, obviously, when you are changing the district attorney in the district that is overseeing this investigation, which again has 2 weeks more until the stay comes to a conclusion. So we'll continue to follow that.
And we did have from the WWE Survivors account, which is the account that's run by representatives for Janelle Grant. They did post a tweet here saying, the stay on Janelle Grant's case will expire on December 11th. Before he leaves, we hope Damian Williams will hold Vince McMahon and John Laurinaitis accountable to the full extent of the law for the abuse Janelle endured. She deserves her day in court. So it's something that Janelle Grant's representatives are clearly watching too.
Now we'll move on over to the Ricky Starks story that picked up a lot of attention over the last 24 hours. So Ricky Starks has been absent from AEW programming since March. And he appeared at GCW's event on Saturday, their Dream On event, and subsequently was announced for
They promoted him for a show coming up in LA for a match with Matt Cardona. He was announced for a show in Seattle, and he was announced for the January 19th show at the Hammerstein Ballroom. But then on Tuesday night, Brett Lauderdale, the owner of GCW, posted that they have been informed that Ricky Starks will not be able to stay on these shows. He is being removed. And then with subsequent reporting from Sean Ross Sapp at Fightful, indicating that that AEW was effectively removing him from being able to take these independent bookings. He can take other independent bookings, just not with GCW. And Fightful, it was reiterated to Fightful that this had to do with comments made by GCW performer Effie on his podcast regarding Tony and Shad Khan. So first, let's play the comments from Effie's podcast that are believed to be the source of this move being made.
All have no buzz, no draw, and we've been riding the lightning on having to actually run a profitable company for the past few years to continue existing. We do not have as much backup. I'll put it this way. My company, I don't run a company. Our company, GCW can't run on a $40 million deficit and continue to run shows. But some of us have the privilege of being able to run at a $40 million deficit.
Brett doesn't own a football team?
Brett does not own a football team. Brett doesn't have a dad who pays him to stay away. I don't want this to be a personal thing. But hey, guys, you're not the only game in town. It's fine. I can't stop you from running venues. But in my line of work, when TNA Impact wanted to run center stage, GCW, a month before and a month after, were told we could not have those dates that we had secured before because it was competing with something they were doing. And now it just seems the game and the respect never goes both ways. And it's fine. We're not mad. Our people will be there. Our show will be great. We will show it out. But it isn't fun to see that, we're so out of ideas right now that the timing is that conspicuous to you showing up and doing that immediately after we announced that we're doing that.
So that was Effie, and at the source of this contention is that GCW had recently announced their return to the Hammerstein Ballroom for January 19th, and then shortly after the announcement of that show, AEW has booked the Hammerstein for 3 straight nights, December 20th, 21st, 22nd, for Final Battle, Collision, and Dynamite. So they are running within several weeks of one another. And, Brett Lauderdale has spoken about this. And first of all, I guess just looking at this from the perspective of AEW, they are technically within their rights here, but you can certainly see there is a lot of frustration from onlookers that here is Ricky Starks, someone that has been pretty public about the fact that he is not hurt, he is wanting to go to work, he is under contract, he is not being used, and now being removed from several high-profile bookings. But obviously these comments from Effie were going to stoke the flames and has led to the removal of Ricky Starks.
Yeah, I mean, the impression I've gotten is that GCW is not AEW's favorite independent wrestling company. Although I think it's pretty clear to say it's the most prominent U.S. indie that for the last several years.
When it comes to shows being run, the amount of places that they run, I would certainly say that.
Yeah, I mean, the impression I've got is that there's a lot of concern about the kinds of shows that they're running and maybe some of the things that happen on or off screen at GCW and having AEW wrestlers involved in that. Obviously, there are exceptions made. Jon Moxley has no problem appearing on Bloodsport, and Marina Shafir appeared on the recent Bloodsport, correct? So it's still happening. And we had an interview with Brett Lauderdale, the promoter of GCW, saying that basically there's no communication, at least directly, between him and he makes it sound like anybody in AEW, but including Tony Khan. Like, he's never had a conversation via text or phone with Tony Khan. It sounds like, I mean, did you get the impression from the Chris Van Vliet interview too, that there's not really even clear communication? I mean, this is what Ricky Starks seemed to be expressing, that there's not even been an explanation given to him about why he's not being used since March, even though he's healthy.
Yeah, and I'm sure that is contributing to the source of frustration, and that frustration seems to be very much been vocalized by Ricky Starks, and this coincidentally just coincided with the Chris Van Vliet interview dropping earlier in the day on Tuesday. So there was a lot of attention on
Yeah.
the situation involving Ricky Starks. And
there's a lot of poking of the bear there from a lot of different directions there. GCW, Ricky Starks, who seems to have some sort of strained relationship with AEW. He's making comments publicly in a really prominent way for the first time in a while.
So it's like I try to look at all the sides here of where you're coming from. Like, one of the arguments in favor of AEW was that Tony Khan has a history of he signs you to a contract, and barring something significant, you're not going to get cut from your contract. You will see the end of your contract. And this was coming at a time when WWE was making its annual cuts, and you could sign a 5-year deal, but you would be hopeful that you would see those 5 years honored. Now they have definitely lessened on that, but that was kind of the reputation AEW was able to acquire, is that you will be paid throughout the length of your deal. Now, there's going to be a lot of performers who, that's great. Ricky Starks is being paid under this deal, but this is a guy in the prime of his career that is sitting on the sidelines and is not contributing in these key years. Now, if you're AEW and you have your suspicions of once this deal is up, he could be going to WWE. He could be leaving AEW. Are we going to invest that time, that real estate on television in someone that we do not have assurances is going to be here for the long haul when we've got
he's under contract till 2025? He said
he's under contract till 2025, and
you stop using him in March. I mean, that's I don't know when his contract ends in 2025, but that's a fair amount of time.
And again,
job him out.
Well, that's it. It's like Tony doesn't do that. Like, these people just disappear from television, and that's going to be frustrating for some. And Ricky Starks is not the only guy that just kind of disappears, and you just don't hear from him. And there's
Miro's another one that people often bring up.
Miro has not wrestled since the World's End pay-per-view last December. We're coming up on a year since this guy. Like, yeah, I was just looking up his totals. Like, this guy has had like a handful of matches in 2 years. So certainly that's when, these are your prime years. You're under contract, but not being used. Of course, that's going to be frustrating. And if you're not getting direct answers, like, it sounds like Ricky Starks is not even being told like a reasoning for this. Like, hey, we feel like you could be leaving when your contract's up. I don't think he's probably getting any kind of answer for this. It's just sit, wait, and cash a check every 2 weeks. So I understand that side of things. And if you're AEW, certainly I think there's really no relationship with GCW. Like, Brett Lauderdale said as much. He's never had any kind of text or no phone call with Tony Khan. Like, he deals with the talents, and it sounds like he didn't even get it wasn't even AEW reaching out to him to pull these dates. Like, he is kind of finding this out through whether it's Ricky Starks or even online.
I sent you the transcript earlier, and it says, this is Brett Lauderdale talking. I found out about this the same time as everybody else did for the most part. And he said that they don't, he's referring to AEW, they don't talk to me. And I'm not saying that in like a negative way. But I guess we've never really had to talk. Anybody who from AEW's worked with us, it's just between me and the talent to arrange it.
Yeah. So, I mean, you can look at it this, like, one of the arguments that, Brett Lauderdale made and such, and Effie even brought up, is that it's sort of etiquette that you don't run the building 30 days before. I'd push back a little and say, I don't think that's necessarily etiquette. It's more so that is worked into these deals, these building agreements that do not allow for that to happen. And if that's not in the wording of the deal, then I feel like if this had a chance of being, prohibitive for GCW, that should have been worked in, that we have exclusivity for 30 days prior and 30 days after. If that's not in there, I can sympathize with a company that is in this situation, but if the door is left open, there's nothing that is stopping an AEW or even a WWE for that matter. If NXT wanted to book the Hammerstein, for instance, like, that is the availability.
And to be clear, what are the dates? GCW is running the Hammerstein Ballroom January 19th.
Yes.
And AEW is running it earlier, December 20th and 22nd is what I'm seeing.
20th, 21st, 22nd. It's 3 straight nights.
Yes, yeah. So they are running it before. I can understand the concern that they're going to like scoop the demand. Yeah.
I think in a roundabout way. I mean, we've seen through WrestleTix that this GCW show, the last time they were in the Hammerstein, that was January 2022. They did just over 2,000 fans. And because of the configuration, that's more tickets than any company has sold at the Hammerstein. It was, from a live event perspective, very successful. This one is kind of stalled. They're just under 700 tickets out. If anything, I think that they might get some kind of buzz out of this controversy of the show that AEW is trying to attack, whether that's accurate or not. GCW seems to be kind of like pushing this as like, we are the underdog brand here up against the big powerhouse in AEW is how they're kind of pushing this show now.
You've got an idea. AEW has a need. They could use something to really ignite interest in their show. What if there was like a GCW invasion onto AEW and they really just, took it to the screen?
Maybe Effie shows up on,
there you go.
On December 21st.
And then Ricky Starks comes in. Okay,
oh my goodness, it writes itself. Last thing here. This was Brett Lauderdale last night. He was on Game Changer Weekly at bodyslam.net, and this was him talking about a favorite topic of Brandon's.
It's a weird situation because, I don't know, Ricky Starks is like an independent contractor, but I mean, this is a whole wrestling conversation that's one of these days, this is going to be tested and something's going to happen because, theoretically an independent contractor is independent and they can go and work wherever they want. But in wrestling, these independent contractors don't seem to be very independent. They're at the whim of an employer, which sure makes it seem like they're an employee.
Luckily, their contracts, they're all under an arbitration clause, so it's going to make it pretty hard to set such a precedent.
Yes, I don't know if this is going to be challenged anytime soon, but you can almost time it like every couple of months that the independent contractor discussion will come up, and nothing will happen to it. So that's kind of the restrictions that some do come with. But yes, this was a notable story over the last day. And the final thing we're going to tackle here is a super chat from Jake from the Windy City. Happy 10th anniversary to CM Punk's appearance on Colt Cabana's Art of Wrestling today. I'm sure the podcast didn't lead to some damaging domino effects. Is this the most consequential podcast in wrestling history of Thanksgiving 2014?
Probably. I haven't listened to it in a while, but I've listened to it more than once. It's really a cornucopia of many of wrestling's issues. I mean, there's a short discussion of unionization and things like that. Like, it's a really influential and sort of all-encompassing podcast. Not to mention what Jake is getting at here is sort of, it led to a lawsuit being filed against Phil Brooks and Scott Colton. And that led to I suppose it contributed to their falling out as friends. And that contributed to the meltdown that CM Punk had in front of me and others in Chicago in Hoffman Estates, right? And led to a lot of problems for AEW, or at least exacerbated them.
Yeah, I think that this podcast, like the legacy of it, is going to be the lawsuit that came out from it. But it was also, from someone that was directly there, kind of, I would guess, probably confirming a lot of like the level of control and maybe out of touch characteristics of Vince McMahon at the time. It also, like, you certainly saw, like, post podcast appearance, I think a much more negative bent towards Roman Reigns, where he was kind of positioned in this podcast as being...
It's months before he's getting booed out of the building, winning the Royal Rumble.
The Rumble is just, it's a few months after this, and that's the one in Philadelphia where he is vociferously booed. And, like, there's definitely an uptick, I think, of that negativity towards Roman Reigns after this podcast as well. It's it's probably the most consequential in that. I think it's very sad that you had like this friendship that was totally torpedoed because of this lawsuit and what happened as a result of it. But
yeah, that was the case. But for many people, this is, it was a pretty significant appearance for CM Punk that every couple of years seems to have one of these, the next one being that press conference you were at.
Yeah. I remember where I was when I listened to this for the first time. I was doing a turkey trot, in fact. It was, for me, the early days of Twitter, and I was hearing about this podcast just dropped out of nowhere. There was no it's coming soon hype.
No,
it just
nothing.
dropped out of nowhere. And Punk had been out of WWE. His last appearance was the prior Royal Rumble in 2014. So this was some 10, 11 months since he had appeared in public at all, I guess. And just suddenly there's a CM Punk interview with Colt Cabana. And I remember
and if you remember, it was only like a week or two later, I think he did another appearance the following week.
Yes.
And then he appears at UFC and announces his signing there. So it almost felt like
Vince does his interview with Steve Austin.
That's right. The Vince interview followed, and Punk was brought up in that whole discussion. That's right. So all of these things just happened in a couple week period. And
Vince had not listened to it at that time.
I imagine he did not have any concept of iTunes in 2014, maybe not in 2024. But that was it. And it just kind of felt like this was Punk getting all the wrestling baggage getting all of this out of his system, doing it where, he wasn't paid a dime to do this interview. This guy could have probably got a gigantic fee to do this.
He discussed that. I could have done a shoot interview for a lot of money, but this is how he wanted to do it.
It was costly in other ways as well. Financially, they would have quite a lot to pay in legal bills. But nonetheless, yes, 10-year anniversary of that Art of Wrestling show. All right, that's going to do it for us. I am back tonight with Wei Ting. We have a Dynamite to discuss as the Continental Classic kicks off. It's Jericho Ishii 2 from Chicago at the Wintrust Arena. And this coming weekend, Brandon will be off. He is going to be celebrating Thanksgiving on a multi-day extravaganza. So no Wrestlenomics radio this coming Sunday, but you will be back here next Wednesday.
Yes, I will be back here next Wednesday. And I think that the Sunday after this coming Sunday, we'll do a free Wrestlenomics radio. But you can sign up at patreon.com to get all of the TV ratings reports. Just had Raw ratings are out this morning. I think I was the first to break that. And quarter hours for Raw are also at patreon.com/Wrestlenomics, as well as the TV ratings reports and quarter hours for SmackDown, Rampage. There's no Collision this week. Looking for NXT ratings later today. I think there'll still be the schedule. I think there will still be NXT ratings today. Do not expect Dynamite ratings at the normal time because tomorrow is American Thanksgiving.
Yeah, and Collision is back Saturday. We have a 3-hour block beginning at 4 Eastern with Collision and Rampage that has like a 1-hour crossover with Survivor Series. So it's a whole day of wrestling on just how Jim Crockett Promotions and WWF had intended back in 1987.
That's how it should be. Wrestling companies should be required to run head-to-head.
All right. All that and more you can find patreon.com/Wrestlenomics. You can check out all of our stuff over at postwrestling.com and postwrestlingcafe.com. Thank you to all of you tuning in. Thank you to Jason Cruz from MMA Payout for joining us, and we will speak with you next week.